Welcome to Modern Morality. My name is Mikey, and I'm joined here by John.
Hello, everyone.
And Johnny.
Hello.
Thank you for listening, and we hope that you enjoy.
Is it going to be sitcoms or is it going to be something TV related?
I think
It's going
TV
to
or
be capital punishment on sitcoms.
no, TV related movies, anything that could be.
Are we recording?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Anything that could be viewed is what I'm thinking.
Okay.
So music videos could easily play a part in that because you have songs that have nothing
Charlie
to do with
Chaplin. It was viewed.
Let's
Anyways,
go.
welcome to Modern Morality. It's good to it's good to be back. Today, I think we're going to talk about maybe some TV, movies, media, that kind of stuff. Let's figure out how that has shaped morality, or maybe morality shaped it. So, what came first, the chicken or the egg?
Oh no, I got banned for those rhetorical questions before. I was censored.
There is certainly more rhetoric around here than necessary. All right, Mikey.
So, I think the first question we need to ask is how traditional. Let's say back in the 50s, 60s, how sitcoms, TV, movies then compared to sitcoms, TVs, movies today.
They were black and white.
Besides the color.
Oh, so you're not looking for the technology.
Talking about the morality behind it.
All right.
So let's start naming off. What are some shows or influential movies from back in that period?
What period?
Mid 40s to, well, when did the TV become pretty prominent? See, that's something
I'm gonna tell you right now that when I was little, all we had was probably a 19-inch black and white TV. Up until the time that we got rich and bought a Quasar TV, first color TV we ever had. That was, I think, was 1966. I guess it was 65, 66.
Listen, I know color TV came around. I think it was mid 60s. But as far as the actual,
oh yeah, everybody else had one.
Yeah, and then as far as the actual TV, like the family TV, I don't know when that became prominent.
I always remembered having one. So.
Well, we can go through a couple of them that we've already mentioned. Was I Love Lucy.
Now we had one for picture and another one for sound, but we always had a TV.
Well, I think there was also a trend. So we're talking about I Love Lucy was a really big one, but you had MASH, which was really big. It was wartime.
That was in the 70s.
70s.
Yeah, a little bit later.
Andy Griffith.
That was in the early 60s, late 50s.
Yeah, you got to go back a little further, like Car 54, My Three Sons.
Then you had the Westerns. When were most of the Westerns prominent?
Same.
Westerns have always been prominent.
Yeah,
true.
Yeah. That they were the genre that started interest in TV was Westerns, whether they were made in the United States.
You're talking about TV. You're talking Gunsmoke, Bonanza,
Rifleman.
Rifleman's a good one.
Oh, the Rifleman's was one of the better ones in my
Wagon
opinion.
Train.
And talk about one that taught moral stories.
Right. And that's where I was going to go with is what were these TV shows meant to simply provide entertainment, or was it meant to provide morals? Andy Griffith, in my opinion, I mean, I was practically raised by that man. He taught me a lot growing up. We used to watch the reruns, John. We didn't watch the originals, I promise. But yeah, my brother and I used to watch Andy Griffith all the time, and mainly because my papa did.
And every episode had a moral to it.
Every one. So one of the things we're learning in class right now, or what we're teaching in class, is talking about theme. What's the author's message? What's his reasoning for, or his or her reasoning for writing this passage? What did they want you to learn? And I think that goes with TV and media.
I don't think that the people that produce these things did it to. Maybe I'm a cynic, okay, but I don't think that they did that to teach people morals. They're doing what's sold. They thought at that time that moral lessons would sell. They didn't do it to give you a moral foundation.
What about Mr. Rogers?
What about Mr. Rogers?
You think the same thing about that?
Yeah, I do.
I mean, it was,
What are you going to let your kids watch? Something that has a moral lesson or not? And I want the advertisers to be able to pay me, so I'm going to put what I think the parents will let their kids watch.
Sesame Street.
There you go.
yeah, Barney in there too. Oh, you got the whole Disney.
Barney was in Andy Griffith. Is that another Barney? I'm sorry.
Yeah, different Barney.
Oh,
Purple dinosaur.
Yeah, different color.
oh,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Not to be racist or anything, but
acted
Barney
the
was a different
same.
color.
Well, purple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Acted the same. So, no, talking so kind of on a tangent, but talking about some interesting facts, and you guys might be able to speak more on this. Do y'all know the history of Don Knotts, the guy who played Barney and Andy Griffith?
I know he had a military background.
He had a military background.
Yeah.
If I'm correct, he was in like I want to say it's like the entertainment corps or something like that, where he was like in this group of entertainers, and they would go for like different camps and different stations, entertaining the troops who were at war. And he was, I don't know if he got any medals or anything like that, but he was really big in the military for a little while before he became an actor in Andy Griffith and the several movies after the fact.
That's true of a lot of actors that people don't know their background, but a lot of actors had military backgrounds.
Well, I mean, if you think about the times,
Well, most people
A
in
lot of
general had
Right.
military backgrounds.
That's true during that period of time.
yeah, I mean, you could go on the street and somebody was a veteran or in active military. That was just a part of the times. But back to the TV. So we had Andy Griffith, the Rifleman, the Westerns. You said Archie. Remind me of the name of the show.
All in the Family.
All in the Family.
And
thank
then
you.
Archie Bunker was a spinoff.
Okay.
Archie's Place, excuse me.
Archie's Place, and it actually took some of the lessons that they learned from All in the Family and applied them to that.
Well, and then another one, and a lot of people give flack to this one show, but Sanford and Son. Sanford and Son usually had some type of moral behind it too. Almost every episode, there was some, even if it was a joke, there was usually some lesson to be learned from it. Can you guys name a TV show nowadays that's not geared to that, like children, that have that same impact, that teaches lessons? Because I mean, like I know Yellowstone's really big right now.
Yeah.
But Yellowstone is simply a narrative. I don't think it has a moral or lesson to be learned. And if it does, you have to imply very heavily.
So
Is who produces that?
What, Yellowstone?
Yeah. Is it a network production or is it
Not Paramount.
Netflix or something?
it's on Paramount, but
It's yeah, okay.
Okay.
But yeah.
I'm not sure where you're going with that though.
I was just interested to know because a lot of these series, they don't have an ending. Most of the time when you have a TV show, a 30-minute sitcom.
I mean, like a soap opera.
Yeah, well, kind of, sort of. No,
So they just go on and on.
they go on and on and on. You're
Right.
absolutely right. And then until one day somebody says, let's jump the shark.
Yeah.
Does anybody know where that comes from?
I have no clue on that one.
When Happy Days was coming down to the end of its lifespan, the writers had run out of things to do, so they had one of the major actors, Fonzie, jump a shark tank on his motorcycle. That was the beginning of the end for that show. And now, when a show is getting to the end of its natural lifestyle, it is they do something that is totally outrageous, and they call it jumping the shark. That was where that term came from. And they still use it
Interesting
today.
bit of trivia.
Yeah, that's where they use it today.
So that kind of goes back to what Johnny said earlier. It was all about making money. It was not about teaching lessons. So I would say almost every single modern day show leaves an opportunity for a continuation. Whereas back in Andy Griffith, every episode was his own individual story.
That is correct. It had a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Right. And there's almost always a lesson to be learned.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think the
And then it goes back to one of my things about people who write, who write songs, who write books, who write blogs, who do who put effort into anything. they have a reason for doing that. They don't just do it, and you have to separate what the application is, what the program is. Is it like Johnny says? Is it just for money, or is somebody actually wanting to teach a moral lesson?
Is it altruistic or just for profit?
So one of the
That's well said.
I think it could be used for both. And what I mean by that is, let's look at MASH. MASH was a type of media, or it was originally designed to show kind of what the soldiers overseas and doctors overseas went through during that time. And one of the things that I was going to say is it was very entertaining. The cast did an amazing job. They were very funny. There was a lot of funny stories. But there were a few episodes that were dark. And they didn't have to be dark. But I think whoever wrote the story or produced the story, whatever, wanted to show the audience, the people, the civilians in the world, what these guys went through. And one of the episodes I'm thinking of particularly is when Hawkeye, who's the main character, I'm sure you guys know, was talking to the shrink. He was talking to the psychiatrist, and he was talking about this one event where he was on a bus, and there were enemies around, and they all had to be quiet. And there was a chicken that would not stop. It would not stop crowing, or whatever you want to call it.
Well,
and eventually
he remembered it as a chicken.
Right. He remembered as a chicken, and it turned out it was a baby, and the mom had to put down her own child in order to save the whole bus of people, and that was
well. You have to realize when MASH was going strong was at the end of Vietnam, and one of the things that there was an agenda that was done by the writers of MASH to tell the horrific side of war in a humorous manner in order to hold their audience. If you just go out there and you just talk about the horrors of war, people are going to lose interest real quick.
Which
they had
and that was during a period where a lot of people resented that war, or that whatever they wanted to call it. It was a war.
That's correct.
This is I don't know this fact, and you may know. Vietnam was the first televised war, right? Where they actually put cameras on. It was on live TV.
Yes.
So, is there? I'm sure there is a statistic, but do you guys know how many people watch those clips?
We had to have TV.
Thank you, John. I appreciate that.
But a lot of that that video was not published. It wasn't out for public scrutiny. It was put in archives, and a lot of that footage was never shown until after the war, and after it was way after the war was over with before they released it, because it showed the horrors of
too
war.
close to home.
Yep.
Well, back on let's get back on the sitcoms and TV shows and all that. So, when did it really stop telling stories, learning lessons? Because I mean, even
I'm not sure they have.
I agree. I'm not sure that they have either.
Y'all give me some examples, because the shows that I've watched, there's you can definitely see an agenda, but it typically
I think it's just like we had on our episode about music, is that I think it's a reflection of your current society. I don't think it stopped doing anything.
I agree.
I mean, look at all these medical shows that are out there. I'm watching one now that's New Amsterdam, and there's a lesson in every one of those. I mean,
The Resident.
Yeah. Does it have a continuing theme? Sure. But I think it also, you can watch each one of them standalone without context from the previous.
Yeah, the other one is The Good Doctor.
Good Doctor's another good
That
one.
was a good one, talking about how people can discriminate against those with issues or conditions or whatnot. That, I mean, in that case, he was a genius.
Mm-hmm.
He just had issues with his, what was it, autism?
Mm-hmm. And what about a house?
Oh, you Lord.
Now you've got a talented doctor, a genius again.
Drug addict.
Drug addict through the whole course of the thing. So
My favorite was always Doogie Howser.
Doogie Howser, yeah.
That was Neil Patrick Harris, right?
That's it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Man.
But no, I don't know why. I don't know why we would say that. I wouldn't say that there's no longer a lesson or standalone message to an episode of modern day shows.
No, and I mentioned The Resident. Once again, we're not getting any benefit from mentioning these shows or people or places or anything.
But if you want to sponsor, please let us know.
The Resident, it is like a soap opera. It's kind of interesting, and a lot of the shows that I'm watching now, they have multiple conflicts and multiple storylines going simultaneously. And every episode, one storyline comes to a close, one storyline continues, and they start another storyline. So most of these things have three things going on simultaneously to keep you coming back to the next episode. The only time that they all come to fruition is the season finale.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
As opposed to back in the day when you had one major cliffhanger at the end of a season,
Right.
like who shot Jr.
my wife and I, we have been rewatching episodes of Leverage. I don't know if you've seen Leverage, John. I know Johnny has because he's the one who kind of put me on the show.
Well, they may be reruns to you, but this is your first time watching them, so you hadn't technically rewatched them.
Well, right. Well, yeah. So I'm going through this show called Leverage, and sure enough, almost every case that they have, there's a kind of a stigma with each one that they overcome. So, yeah, I mean,
Well,
I agree with
they've
you.
got an overlying theme too. You know, does the
Robin Hood.
well, yeah,
Yes,
does
the Robin Hood effect.
Does the ends justify the means? They're all crooks, but they're doing good.
I'm gonna to interject this about The Resident. There's a storyline where the hospital is facing cutbacks in their funding, and the issue is that the governor, the current governor of the state that they're in, Georgia, had an issue with the hospital, and he essentially wanted it to be shut down. Well, he gets sick and has to go to the hospital, specifically this hospital. And he comes to find out that his heart is failing and he needs a transplant. Now, here's where the morality of those shows comes in, is if they save his life by putting him at the top of the donor recipient list, chances are he's going to keep their funding going. So the moral question is that morally correct?
Yeah, is his life more valuable than the one who would have received that heart otherwise?
Does the good of the many outweigh the need of the one?
That's a fun.
That's exactly the way the writers handled that.
Right, and that MASH episode, same thing with the bus. I mean, she took care of her own child to save the whole busload.
Oh, I mean, it started with Spock in the '60s with Star Trek. I don't know what y'all were talking about.
Nerd.
Live long and prosper.
Yeah.
Sometimes the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few,
Or
the
the
one.
one. See?
Yeah, Star Trek's one of those that's. I'm sure there's a lot of lessons to be learned, but there's just so much content with Star Trek.
Absolutely.
You
There's like,
do.
what, 4 spin-off shows?
It's one of the best shows around.
Yeah.
If you look back on Star Trek was one of the first integrated TV shows,
Yes, it was.
and it was not only
It was the first televised interracial kiss.
that is correct, and interplanetary.
A lot of those actors and actresses in that actually wrote biographies. There's a lot of interesting stuff about the first that it had that they'll speak to in their books.
And
Highly recommend them.
and to this day, there is controversy amongst the actors.
There is. Certainly
So-
is.
We usually do like, how does it impact morality, or how does morality impact this? But the question I have for you guys is, what show or movie in the last 60 years do you think has been the most impactful to American culture? I'm thinking Forrest Gump.
I'm interested. Tell me your thoughts.
So
there.
Forrest Gump is a story about a guy who has a very low IQ, But even with that difficulty, he became very successful. He became a war hero. He, I think he even won the tournament in ping pong in China. He fought through every challenge he ever had, not knowing how bad it was. And it truly, I mean, just the soundtrack alone, it's an American movie. I mean, the music that goes along with it was pretty interesting too. But it's just every little sub. So John was talking about how the show he's talking about has a lot of side stories. Well, I mean, the same thing with this movie, Forrest Gump. You have Lieutenant Dan and his story. You have Bubba in that story. You have Jenny in that story. You have his mom in that story. And there's just all these pieces, all these characters that have their own lives, and how every single one is shaped by this one individual who doesn't realize how big of an impact he has. But as far as impact in the culture, I mean, that is, in my opinion, one of the most American movies you can find.
I bet if you asked 10 people, though, that same question, you would get 15 different answers.
Oh, I'm sure. That's why
I have more than one, and Johnny probably knows one of my favorite movies of all time, and it has morality built into it. Any guesses?
Tombstone?
Shrek.
He is a Shrek fan.
I love that movie,
Shrek
and
is a
and
great
it
one.
has
Yeah.
and it has
He kept Shrek. No, he did not.
Fiona.
I started to say he kept Shrek figurines in his work cubicle, but it was Fiona only.
Fiona.
So one of the things, so in the last episode, we talked about how creators of songs would purposely change their lyrics in order to make it more kid friendly. Farquaad. You think he's compensating for something?
Exactly.
But no, it truly is. I never thought about Shrek, but that was a huge impact to the culture because it was.
So that's what I mean. You ask different people; they've
Yeah.
had different influences.
And there's a song in there that has multiple what is it, stanzas, multiple anyway, it's a long song. It's called Hallelujah.
Yeah, Leonard Cohen.
Yeah, and they deliberately kept out a couple of verses because they were not suitable for children.
Right. No, I agree with John. I never thought about Shrek. Shrek is such a, I want to say it's a culturally important movie. What about the sequels? You think Shrek was the only one, or you think the sequels did a good job as well?
I'm not a fan of sequels. I don't care what the movie is. I'm just not a fan of them. They can never. If a sequel is better than the first one, there's something wrong with the way the first one was presented.
I don't necessarily agree with that.
I don't care. I didn't ask
Give
you
us an
for your
example where
approval.
the sequel was better then.
Well, I don't know if I would say the sequel is better, but I think Shrek 2 was an amazing movie compared to Shrek. And it was because they took audience concerns and comments, and they actually went through with them, and they actually fixed some of the issues and some of the continuity errors. And it was a very good story.
Okay, you want to know what my next one is?
Shrek 2.
No. And this one has sequels, and they won't, and they're not better than the first one.
All right, give me a minute. Is it live action or animated?
Animated. You can't guess it.
Lion King?
Who?
Lion King? I have no clue.
Nah, it was a good movie, but it don't match Toy Story.
Toy Story was such a good one.
Yeah.
Toy Story was a good one. Again, Toy Story 2.
No sequels.
So have
I
John.
feel like I'm watching a tennis match here.
Do you realize that the original of a movie is the basis for everything else
Right.
that comes after?
It's the foundation. It's the bones.
It is, and from that you get the shock value of what happens in that moment. In the next one,
And a lot of
you have-
backstory, too.
yeah, and you have in the next episode or the next version of it, you've already gotten to the mindset of essentially what's going to happen.
You already know who your heroes are.
Yes.
You already know who the villains are.
Yep.
Well, I don't know if that's necessarily true because you can still have a really
you
big.
care?
Don't care.
Okay.
It's Toy Story 3. You have Luxo, the bear. I mean, that was a huge plot twist in the story. And nobody was going to know that this friendly old bear was going to be the villain. They thought it was the other character this entire time. And Toy Story 3 had a very impactful message, too. Have you, John, and this is a little off topic.
Yeah, he pointed at me, so I knew he was going to talk to me.
Yeah. So, regarding to Toy Story 3, if you haven't seen it, have you seen it?
No.
So,
It's a sequel.
right. Well, I know he might not like them. That doesn't mean he hasn't seen them. So, there was a prank that these two college kids did regarding Toy Story 3. So, spoiler alert to whoever hasn't seen Toy Story 3.
Don't watch it.
There is a scene where the original cast get thrown into an incinerator, and they're falling down closer and closer to the flame. And there's these two college kids. Their mom hasn't seen the movie yet. And of course, the claw machine comes and scoots them up. Big surprise. Well, they edited the video. They actually took the raw feed of the film, cut it at that moment as they were sliding down into the incinerator, and put the credits right after it. The mom was devastated. So it was like they're all like hugging up together. They're closing their eyes. It starts to fade, and then it goes, "You got a friend in me." It's false to credits, and the mom is traumatized, absolutely traumatized. But it goes back to your point about Toy Story built the foundation. That's where the characters are developed. I say developed. That's where they're introduced, and that's where people tend to fall in love with them. I still think sequels are very important. I still think Shrek 2 and Toy Story 2 are very, very good movies. I think the only sequel.
Let me ask you, what did you think about Forrest Gump 2? There's a gigantic pause here because he's trying to think, why didn't they have a Forrest Gump 2?
There you go.
There's a reason for it.
Well, I was going to say, what about Joe Dirt? And they ended up making a Joe Dirt sequel. That one was not good that I remember. So.
I'm surprised anybody remembers that one.
I don't know.
I'm surprised anybody remembers Joe Dirt.
Joe what?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But to your question, I have no idea. They could have easily made a sequel. I don't know why they didn't. But that doesn't mean that their sequel is going to be garbage in comparison. You don't know.
Tell us, John. Why didn't it?
Because you can't get better than the first one.
Ah.
All right, this is another movie that had great moral implications, and that was Dances with Wolves.
Mm-hmm.
I realize we've gotten away from actually TV, but we're staying in entertainment.
The media, yeah.
Yeah, we're still staying in entertainment, so I'm going to stick with my question.
Video, too.
Yeah.
Killed the radio star.
Mm-hmm. So Dances with Wolves, I can't remember which Indian nation it is. I think it was Sioux. Was very prominent in the making of that movie, and they were delighted and excuse me, how they
He's
were
getting all
portrayed.
choked up, guys. This is a very impactful movie for him.
It represented them well. Yeah.
It did.
We're at 28 minutes right now, so we need to be wrapping up soon. But there's one
like
point.
2 minutes from now.
So what,
Like 2 minutes from now.
So what did we get out of this as a morality standpoint?
But before we go to that, there's one thing that I would like to mention, and I don't know if you guys would agree with this or not. But as an educator, we teach our kids lessons through stories. Those stories are typically written. I think one of the biggest things about media, movies, TV shows is that they're bringing these typically books, because a lot of these movies, shows, or adaptations, of books. And I think that they're extremely important to build morality, since you're taking the lessons from the books and giving them life outside of these pages. And I think that's really important as far as the communication goes too. So any of these shows that we talked about before, some of the movies we've talked about, they were originally books. And I think that's important to say, because a lot of the lessons that we learn from any type of entertainment typically originated from this one source.
Well, let me take you one step further. Everybody that takes the time and effort to write something down, to write this book, has an agenda. Do you think that the people who take that to a different media if they're following that same agenda?
May not, but they. So I think they may have been impacted by the book, which is why they think it would be such a success in film, TV, so on.
You don't think it's about for money?
It very well could be, but again,
or power, or
power.
influence.
but again, even if they thought that this would fail, they wouldn't invest the money in it. So obviously, they think that it's impactful in some way.
That's correct.
You know, I can see us revisiting that topic when we finally start, broaching the subjects of like religion. You know, how did they choose which chapters went into the Bible, or which books went into the Bible?
Like I say,
canonization.
And like I say, everybody who wrote anything had an agenda.
Had an agenda.
Everybody that
And if you don't understand the history and the politics of the time,
context,
then you don't know what that agenda was.
That's correct.
So one more.
You don't know what was in that person's mind. You don't know what was.
Right. Well, that was deep. Now let me share with you what
Let's get shallow.
Let's talk just a minute about lessons learned. So I don't know. I'm hoping for our avid followers that they realize that we also had a podcast version on music. And during that one, I got chastised for asking a whole lot of questions. I actually changed all of my questions to the form of statements during this episode. So, see how many people go back and listen to it to find which ones those were.
I think he needs a round of applause is what he's looking for.
No.
He's not even going to get acknowledgement from that. not from me.
Again, shallow.
Yeah.
Well, we're past that 30-minute mark. Johnny, you have anything before we go?
No, I'm good.
John, anything to add?
Live long and prosper.
And I can't say it any better myself. All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening, and have a wonderful night. Thank you for listening to Modern Morality. Please visit our website at modernmoralitymedia.com and leave us some feedback about the show. We look forward to exploring more with you. Until next time.